Awesome. Thank you for having me here today, Kevin. It's great being on location on a set like this. I'm having a good time already, and I appreciate the opportunity to learn a bit about you today. What I'm trying to do with this podcast is get a sense of the different types of insights folks have that have taken on a role in career development. And one thing I'm finding our guests really enjoy is just hearing a little bit about your own career journey so far. So, what kind of things have you done that have led you into the position you are today? And are there any highlights you can share with us? It seems to be everyone's favorite part. So I'd love to hear a bit about how you got to where you are today.
That's great. And first of all, I just want to say thank you for driving so far to get here. It's wonderful to have people on site. We used to actually do a kind of over Zoom format and all that sort of stuff, but I like actually, it's nice to have people here post COVID and everything, right? So I can certainly dive into that. My career really started actually way back. I used to be a volunteer at the YMCA, and so I went to university, went off to Korea for a couple years, and then came back. I was teaching English out there. And then I was I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. My background is in psychology. And it was I was told, generally speaking, if you want to do anything in the field of psychology, you need at least a master's. And, I suppose lucked out a little because I'm doing something in kind of relatively in my field. But it started with that volunteerism because I actually went to the YMCA Employment Services as a client. And I started off as a client. And when I was leaving the appointment, I connected with a guy. His name is Paul Shelton. He was a volunteer coordinator way back when I was younger. And he said, "Oh, what have you been up to and everything?" And I said, "I was teaching abroad for a while, and that was really good." And he informed me that they have an instructor position in their literacy and basic skills program. So I went into to meet with Pam, who ran that program, and I got a bit of an informational interview, and then I eventually got an actual interview, and started working as a math and English instructor through the YMCA. I did that part-time for a while, and eventually a position came up as an employment counselor through the YMCA, and I applied for it. I spoke to Malcolm. Malcolm is now working at previously St. Leonard's. It's now called SOARS. And he hired me on. And so that was kind of like my entry into employment counseling. That was about 8 years ago now. Since then, my career has been trying to figure out what it is that I'm deficient in and diving into the thing that I find that I'm deficient in. So an example of that, when I first was working as an employment counselor, I had people coming in and talking to me about apprenticeship. And I was like, I don't know enough about apprenticeship to effectively help, right? So I a position came up as a pre-apprenticeship coordinator for a 310T program, and Karen, who's still the program manager there at the YMCA, she ran the program for a while, and that program had been running for 20 some odd years. I applied to the position and ended up getting into the position, and I learned a ton about apprenticeship as a result of that. I connected with Mohawk College. They have an amazing program there with all the truck motors and all that sort of stuff, and the students and everything can actually physically work on those things. And a lot of it was about being in the classroom and ensuring the students were there and getting them from, working. I think at the time minimum wage was like $14 an hour, getting them from those $14 an hour jobs into jobs that pay like 30, 35 plus an hour, right? So, I did that, I believe, for a couple of years. And then after that, I started to recognize that one of the areas that I was deficient in was disability. And trying to figure out what can I do to kind of better myself in the disability realm. One thing that I'll say is that throughout my career, whenever I meet people, whenever I connect with people, I connect with them on LinkedIn as well, and I start to build a network. I try to have an active conversation with those people, and I'll say things like, how is it like to work at Path, or how is it like to work at InStage, and learn more about that sort of thing naturally, so that later on when I have a conversation with them, it's a kind of continuation as opposed to kind of a cold call situation, right? Well, I had done that with Path. In fact, it was noted when they interviewed me here that a whole bunch of people had already connected with me on LinkedIn, and everybody already kind of knew of me at least. And so I ended up getting a job here as an employment coordinator. After that, this role came up. Originally, it was a supported employment specialist role, and I took it on because of a mat leave, and was able to kind of grow the program enough that I was able to stay on afterwards, and we had two of us instead of just the one, which was great. And I've learned so much about working with folks who have disabilities in this role, and it's just a continuous accumulation of knowledge so that I can better kind of support clients and everything. Yeah.
That is amazing, Kevin. It's the reason I asked this question is I already have so many more questions for you. I just think it's so fascinating to learn that everyone truly does have a unique journey, and there's no one way to kind of get to, the next step in your career or life. And already there's so much overlap I'm excited about between us, because I actually lived in Korea for a little while as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, really early on, my family actually used to own a martial arts studio, and we taught Taekwondo. And
Wonderful.
It's the national sport of
Yes,
Korea.
Of
so
I
spent time living with a family there, and I found it beautiful there. I'm curious what you just thought of the place.
Oh yeah, it was a wonderful experience living there. Now, when I first went there, I was living in Pocheon, which is up on the north end of South Korea.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little army town, and I didn't know any Korean. I didn't even know the Korean alphabet, and because it was a very rural area, nobody knew any English. So I had to learn Korean pretty quickly in order to kind of get by and everything. I didn't learn much. I learned basic phrases, like where's the washroom, and please give me such and such. And if you know any Korean, like the Korean alphabet is such that you can kind of read through it and say it and not know what it means, but it's very easy to read. It's not like English. So that made things a little bit easier, but no, absolutely beautiful countryside. And then my second year there, I lived in Songnam, and that was a different experience because they're a very populated area. People knew English, and for the most part, I could get as soon as they saw that I'm not Korean, they're like, okay, yeah, he probably speaks English, and I would walk up to a counter and they would just start talking English to me. So that was a bit of an easier experience my second year there.
That's incredible. Yeah, I only know kind of select few martial arts based terms,
right.
But I do know Kamsamnida, so thank you
right.
for that story.
Yeah.
But I do think it's just fascinating for people to know that, you spent 3 years there, right?
2 years.
2 years there. Even that, right? Like after school to be able to do something so drastically different than live here. I think it's encouraging to know, you can do something like that, learn so many new things, and come back with a bit of a new perspective and figure out what you want to do next. And I think people hesitate sometimes to jump into those things. But it's, it sounds like a big part of what took you to the next step is that people recognize, oh, this is a skill you have. And it would be great if you could use that, at the first role. It's funny you mentioned Malcolm. It's the second time I've spoken about him today.
Okay.
So your ears must be burning, Malcolm. But no, I've heard nothing but good things. So that's really cool that he's part of your story as well. And the other thing that stood out to me about kind of the way you described your approach to learning and finding these deficiencies, as you call them, to me, that kind of jumps out as something that I think really helps people make progress in their career. And it's, finding genuine ways to help. So when I hear that, it really sounds more like, hey, you recognize the need early on and we're passionate about trying to help in that area. And I think that's where genuine connections start to form, is when you take that approach instead of just asking people for things, you're offering something. So I just think it's really great to hear that. And I hope people, listen to that story and try to find those things for themselves. Now, the next thing I'm kind of wondering, because you've been in career services, in a couple different roles, how have you seen it change over the years? Are there things that are done differently now, or things that have changed in the field compared to when you first got in this line of work?
Yeah, certainly, and I mean, it'll certainly be something that we talk about a little bit later, because I'm very curious about your work. But things have, I mean, in terms of the workload and just Employment Ontario itself, it has very much so changed. But a lot of the stuff kind of remains the same. I mean, I generally recommend when I'm kind of consulting with caseworkers kind of across Southern Ontario, that we got to find where is the kind of weak link in the application chain, or weak link in the job search chain, and focus in on that and say, okay, what's not going right here, and tweak it a little or change it a little. And I mean at the end of the day, our goal is to kind of, at the end of the day, to get people jobs and have them keep jobs. Now that, and it's funny because that wasn't always the case. It used to be just strictly focus on getting people jobs, and it's one of the great changes that have happened in the kind of transformation that happened over the past 3 or 4 years now. Is there is much more of a focus on retention. And I think that's probably one of the best things that have come out of the whole transformation in Employment Ontario, is we are really much more focused on, you found a job, that's great. Now let's figure out what the next year is going to look like. So it's not just about getting people jobs and moving on. Yeah, so I'd say that's probably the biggest change that I've seen, and it's a really good one.
I think it is too, and it's another reason I'm excited to share some of these stories and insights, because I'm not sure that the people who might need this support recognize that it's going to be there after they get their foot in the door. And I think that's gotta give you some sense of comfort as well, to know that when you step into a new workplace, hey, you're not on your own. There's going to be continued support. And I hope that encourages more people to reach out for help and these resources. And I think that's going to, lead to some interesting things for them, because as that year plays out, kind of like, you've told us in your story, these new opportunities arise and you might have questions. And it's nice to know you can kind of go back to the people who helped you get there and ask some of those. So I think that's great to know. In that same kind of line of thinking now, I'm curious, based on, the time you've spent in the field, what do you think some of the misconceptions about career services, employment services in general are? Is there a kind of general misconception that we can help clear up, just based on, how you've seen services delivered, or the people that can make use of these resources?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a tough question to answer. I mean, the kind of, I suppose, go-to answer for that would be to say, we're not necessarily a temp agency service, for instance, and I'm sure you've probably heard that before. But at the same time, we we want to establish that we're here to help everybody, and that ideally to find more permanent sources of work and not to have to go from job to job to job. And if you're wanting very temporary focused work, then fair enough. Then those temp agencies and everything are the right choice. I would say that that's one of them. And the other one, and this is just in my experience, having kind of going into a lot of the service providers across Southern Ontario, is that there's a lot of really good, really skilled people in these places. And, they have the knowledge to provide to potential clients on the resume, the cover letter, all that sort of stuff. When if you need someone for doing your taxes, you're going to go to a tax professional. And I think, and there's a lot of jobs like that. And I think job search is very much this, or ought to be very much the same, in that if, you're going to be better off on your job search by going to a job search professional, right? So, yeah.
Absolutely. And believe it or not, it's actually only the second time I've heard that as the misconception. And I think it's so worth clarifying that, because I could see that preventing people from seeking support through employment service centers, because they might feel like, I'm not ready for work yet. And when the thought process is, I'm going to go there and they're going to get me a job, I can see that being daunting. Whereas instead, all you have to kind of do is walk through the door, and suddenly you're surrounded by these resources and people that can guide you and even help you figure out what kind of job it is you want to do. So I just think it's worth, I'm glad to echo that and reinforce that that's not the case. There, like you said, there are services for that, but this is more of a start from the beginning kind of approach. And I agree. I think it's interesting to hear how different everyone's career journey is, and how helpful it can be to have someone who knows what the job search can be like there to just, be alongside you. Especially when you hear job seekers talk about how they've sent out so many resumes, and you can get the sense you're doing something wrong, and talk to an employment specialist and they can tell you, actually, no, it's just the job market right now. You're not doing anything wrong. Now, kind of on the flip side of the coin here, the other group of people I like to talk about are the employment specialists themselves. And I was just talking to one of your colleagues about this before we started the recording, about how to keep that group of people motivated and how to keep that group of people, top of mind as well. It's a group of people that have this nature to be helpful, but sometimes I think it can be tough for them to ask for help if they need it. So, have you heard of resources, or are there, any pieces of advice you can give the people who do this kind of work, so they don't get burnt out and can continue doing what they're doing?
Yeah, funny enough, that's what we do.
Oh, well, there you go.
The Hub at Path, we are a consultative service that is made to, we do the one-to-one consultation with the caseworkers on cases that they're not sure how to move forward with. We also do a lot of webinars. We also run a podcast and do all that sort of stuff. So we are kind of there as one of the supports for that purpose within the FedCap network, at least. And I see the need for it. We're constantly very busy.
Yes.
So that's good. Good, I suppose.
Definitely.
But generally, I mean, I think more generally, not focused just on the hub, is learning about kind of organization and time management skills. It's a very underrated set of skills that you really need in this job, because the caseload sizes are booming, and the labor market, as you said, it's a little bit tough right now. So we're wanting to. It's very important to know how to appropriately manage your time and know how to organize yourself in such a way that you're not going to get burnt out. And if you don't have those skills, it becomes very easy to have a squeaky wheel approach, where whichever client is loudest or calling you all the time or whatever else, they're the ones that are going to get helped at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing I'm glad we can touch on here. And we'll link to the hub services, because I hope people take advantage of that. And do you have any quick instructions on how to reach out for support? Like, if you're part of the FedCap network as an employment specialist, can you reach out to the hub directly and look for those webinars and that kind of thing?
Oh, yeah. I imagine most of the people within the FedCap network have at least heard of us.
Good.
And within the emails that we send out, there's a link to book in with me or my colleague Matea. And then the webinars and all that sort of stuff, they come to your emails. If they don't, for some reason, reach out, and we'll be sure to we'll be sure to get you on the mailing list. And we have a website and all that sort of stuff. So yeah.
Okay, that's amazing to hear, and I think it might be important for some of the other organizations who are trying to start programs like that. Just to be aware that this exists within this network. It's doing the work that I think many caseworkers need, because it's like you're saying, right? These end up being the point people for not just resume and interview help, but all the auxiliary sort of challenges that can come from job searching. So I'm glad that there are resources for them. It's amazing to hear that there's a program for cases that can be complex, and that this isn't something they have to deal with on their own. So that's really encouraging to hear. Mm-hmm. And I know I don't have a ton more of your time, Kevin. So the last sort of question I'm wondering is, based on what you're seeing in the job market and the types of skills you're hearing might be in demand, do you have any thoughts on the kinds of jobs or the kinds of skills that will be sought after in the next few years?
Oh gosh. In my opinion, it's a little bit of a backwards way of going at it. And the reason why I say it, because I have clients who would come to me all the time and say, and this particular in disability work, Kevin, here is a list of my disabilities, A, B, C, and D. What work should I do? And it's kind of the same formulated question, because you're saying, okay, Kevin, here is the labor market, and here are all the jobs and the jobs that are in demand or not in demand, and here are the wages of those jobs, and so which job should I do? And I found that in terms of holding on to work and retention of work and all of that sort of stuff, that it's much better to start off with, what would you love to do? What would you love to do? And then, like, once we have that, or maybe a small list of that, then you can look and say, okay, so based on what you would love to do, let's actually look into these statistics. Let's see, first of all, do you require education for that thing? If you don't require education for it and it's something you would love to do, you can just start applying and hope for the best, right? If it does require education, then and you're investing in yourself, you're investing your money, your time, and everything through education, then we want to say, okay, are there actually jobs on the other side of this? And is it the type of job that is going to fit within your budget, right? So take an account of how you're living right now. Are you happy with how you're living right now? And if you're happy with it, then say, okay, this is the amount of money that I need in order to keep this lifestyle. And find that stuff that you would absolutely love to do. Try to see if there's some sort of match in terms of, education requirement and the, actually jobs on the other side of it. And there's a couple really good websites that uses census data through Statistics Canada. That you can go and look at the job outlook over the course of the next 3 years for most particular jobs, based on region, and learn more about those particular jobs and determine whether or not it's worth the investment in education and all that sort of stuff in order to go into it. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I think that's just a great insight on the approach to take. I think that's certainly more important a starting point than what's going to be popular is, what do you enjoy doing? I think that's always important to come back to.
It's gotta be, because at the end of the day, like, I can tell you, okay, machine operator is, I think it has like 4 out of 5 stars in terms of the job outlook, which means generally speaking, there are more jobs to be had than people trying to get into it. Right. But are you going to be happy in it? And some people are. One of my best friends, he actually is a machine operator, and it's kind of one of those work to live scenarios, right? So you're working, and he probably enjoys a large portion of the job, but you're working in order to live outside of work, right? And that's okay, and that's good for a lot of people, and that can be a solid career, right? On the flip side, and I consider myself very lucky in this, in that I'm in one of those kind of live to work sort of positions where, even if money was no object, I absolutely love what I do and would probably end up doing it regardless. So there's a lot of factors to consider there, and trying to figure out, which jobs you would absolutely love to do, so that you can, because at the end of the day, you want a job that you're actually going to stay in. I think I am in a particular place right now where I just absolutely love the work that I'm doing. So it hasn't been so much about moving on from this so much as trying to grow what right. I'm doing right now, because this is a really cool experience. It's a position of a lifetime, I think, and I'm doing my best to learn as much as I can on a daily basis. I'm always reading, always trying to learn the next best thing. And actually I'm really excited to talk on the other side of this to learn more about InSage, because AI is really interesting. It's going to be certainly the kind of thing of the future, and it's it's in a sense it kind of devalues some things. So for instance, it devalues things like maybe webinar-based tools or things like that, because you don't necessarily need an actual person to do it. Mm-hmm. So there's that side of it, but there's also there's a lot. We'll talk about this on the other side.
Fair enough. No, I think that's really cool to hear that, I think it's wonderful to hear actually that you're excited about where you are and are looking for ways to just expand on the work you're doing. It sounds like the ideal position to be in. Yeah. And so again, really appreciate getting the chance to speak today with you and just hear your story. It's always exciting to learn from someone else's experience. So thanks again, Kevin.
Pleasure. Thank you.